All right, guys. So we will be talking about amending the Constitution today. So we've talked about the government last week. We talked about the Constitutional Convention. So now we'll be making or talking about the amending of the Constitution. So how do we make changes to the Constitution is another way of putting that. So amending or amendments to the Constitution. All right. So what is an amendment? So the framers or the founders of the Constitution, such as James Madison and other authors of the Constitution, knew that the Constitution would not be perfect, as the times would change. The way people interpreted and thought of the Constitution would also change. So they wanted to make sure that the Constitution would change over the time as people also changed. So the founders created a process in which changes or amendments could take place to the Constitution. So really an amendment is a change or addition to the Constitution's written words. So they knew it wouldn't be perfect, so they needed to make it where it would change every time as people change as well, and the way people thought as well would change. So as like last week, make sure if while you're taking notes, if I'm going too fast and you need to hit pause, and make sure you hit pause to make sure you get all the notes down. We are going to use them in the future, so make sure that you have all of the notes completed. So what is, or how is an amendment proposed? So there are going to be two ways an amendment can be proposed or put forth. First one being by Congress by a 2/3 vote in both houses. And you should know both houses meaning the Senate and the House of Representatives. So it has to be a 2/3 vote for both. Second way being a national convention called by Congress and requested by 2/3 of state legislators. So out of these two, I believe 100% of them have been proposed the first way by Congress with a 2/3 vote in both houses. And then if it's proposed, then how is the amendment ratified? So ratified just meaning how is it passed? So an amendment to the Constitution must be ratified or approved, and it can also be ratified one of two different ways. First, by 3/4 of the state legislators. Secondly, by a convention of 3/4 of the state. And just like the way that the amendment's proposed, the first way will be the way the majority will be ratified. So 3/4 of the state legislator. I'm going to show you a more simplified map in the next slide that will kind of help you understand. So step one is the way the amendments can be proposed. Step two are the way the amendments are ratified or passed. So it can be, proposed by Congress by 2/3 vote, but then it can either be ratified by the state legislature of 3/4 of the state, or it can go to the bottom right and be ratified by a convention. Same goes for the bottom left. So either way it's proposed, it can be passed either way as well. So it doesn't have to go straight across. But like I said, almost 100%, if not 100% of the ones that were proposed and ratified were done the top way. So if you look at step one, amendment is proposed. The top left one, proposed by Congress by 2/3 vote. Usually if it's proposed that way, it will be go straight across and be ratified by the state legislator of 3/4 of the states. That's the way it is typically proposed and ratified. And this is not something that happens, very frequently. There are only 27 amendments and 10 of the Bill of Rights that were pretty much made when the Constitution was created. So this is not something that happens a lot, but the way it would happen typically is the top row. There are also informal amendment processes. So it's not really going to be an amendment made directly to the Constitution. So some examples of informal ways can be the Congress legislation or laws. So it can have a change in law without actually changing the Constitution. The president can have executive action, which he can declare a law, but he cannot violate the Constitution. So he can put forth an executive action, declare a law, but make sure that it does not go against the Constitution. Another major one is the Supreme Court decisions, which they have the power to interpret the law, and they could find laws possibly now unconstitutional. But these are just informal amendment processes, so they're not an actual and official amendment in the Constitution. So the amendments themselves, as they've been mentioned, there are going to be 27 amendments. The first 10 amendments are the famous Bill of Rights that were ratified and passed in 1791. So we have the Bill of Rights because when the Constitution was finished, there was a group called the Anti-Federalists who were against ratifying or passing the Constitution because they was really wanting a basic Bill of Rights for the citizens. So they're wanting, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, right to bear arms, just the basic human rights that were not written in the Constitution. So James Madison and some of the other founders went back and wrote the first 10 amendments. And after these Bill of Rights were added in, many of the Anti-Federalists that would not previously ratify or sign the Constitution would now sign and approve the Constitution after this was placed. And the last amendment that is actually put in place is in 1992. So that's the latest one. So we're going to talk about some of the important amendments that were added in. Some of the more well-known. The first being the 13th Amendment. It's going to be a very well-known amendment. And this was passed in April of 1864 by the Senate and the House and ratified and passed in 1865. And this is going to be the first amendment to come out of the Civil War, and it's going to ban slavery forever, except as punishment for a crime. So it bans slavery in the U.S. forever, except for punishment for a crime. So if you think about it in a way, that's more like a prisoner, jails. So they're in there because they have done wrong, and therefore they are technically, a slave as such. The 14th Amendment. It's one of the most important in our country's history. It's been used in important legislation and laws. It deals with citizens and who are citizens and the protections that are given to them. It has dealt with making sure that all races have a fair and equal education. Back in the Bush and Gore presidential election, made sure to ensure that everyone's vote counted equally. And this is going to be ratified in 1868. So establishes citizenship and equal protection under the law. You have the 15th Amendment. So as a good amount of time has passed since we talked about the 15th Amendment, and now we have the 18th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, and this is actually right after the 14th. And it passed in 1870 and gave all the slaves or prior slaves the right to vote if they were male and citizens. So all former slaves that were male and citizens now have the right to vote, and during this time, women have yet to receive the right to vote. We will get to that shortly. This is going to be 1870. All right, and then the 18th Amendment, this is when a good bit of time has passed since the 15th Amendment. It's going to be more of the coming out into the progressive movement, the progressive era, late 1800s, early 1900s. The prohibition, or they're wanting to do away with the intoxicating drink or alcohol. Many believe that alcohol was the cause of the hard times they were experiencing, and proposed in 1917. They went forth. Now it is illegal to manufacture or sell the production of alcohol. As we know today, alcohol is legal, so it is going to be repealed, and this will be a later amendment that we will get to. The 19th Amendment is finally when the women are given the right to vote. So this one was first introduced in 1878, but it was not ratified and not approved until 1920, giving women the right to vote. And then we just talked about the 18th Amendment prohibiting the production and sale of alcohol. The 21st Amendment ends this amendment, and now alcohol is able and legal to sell in the United States. So some of the other amendments. First, going to be the 22nd Amendment, and it set term limits for the president. So the president just cannot be stay in office pretty much forever. So they can't serve term after term after term. They only get 2 terms. That's going to be the 22nd Amendment. 25th Amendment deals with the presidential succession. So if something happened to the president, he is assassinated or sick and could not operate, pretty much deals with who is next in line. So next on will be the vice president. If something happens to him, who would be next? So 25th Amendment deals with what happened if something happened to the president. 26th Amendment lowered the voting age from 21 to 18. That's going to be during the Vietnam War. So people, they thought if these 18-year-olds are going overseas, dying for the country, they should be able to vote as well. So they're going to lower the age from 21 to 18 to vote. And then the last one deals with the salaries of Congress members. So pretty much Congress can't pass that all Congress members should get a raise. Of course, I'm sure they all believe they should, but they cannot do that. So they can raise the level of Congress salaries, but it will not affect their salary. So if they put it forth, the next term would reap that benefit of a higher salary, not them. So they can't make themselves have a higher salary. So that's the 27th Amendment. All right, so make sure that throughout this, if there is any that you did not get, go back, rewind it to the slide that you need, pause it, and write it down. Make sure that you've received all the notes, and you will use these notes on the future assignments that are on Canvas.